We'll get started today in downward facing dog. About 3 or 4 breaths here to land, maybe finding movement or stillness. And on your next inhale, right leg will lift. Option 2, bend your knees, stack your hips, finding a scorpion tail here. And option 2, flip your dog if you'd like. And take your time. As you're ready, we'll meet in a lizard lunge. Right foot steps forward, making sure knees stacked up over ankle. Option to stay lifted for a more active lizard. You can point and flex the left toes, maybe shift the weight forward and back. About 5 or 6 more breaths here to find your lizard. You may choose to stay here in the lizard, or we'll add a little more movement, working our way from lounging lizard through horizon lunge. If you're not already there, we'll lift up onto the hands and plant the left hand down. Right fingers up towards the sky. We'll spin the toes to face over towards the right edge of the mat as you lower the right hand down towards that left foot. Bring the hips to a hover. On your inhale, press into the feet, lift your hips, sweep the right arm up overhead, creating a rainbow shape here with the body. And flowing here with your own breath. So as you exhale, you can lower the hips, sweep the right fingers towards the back edge of the mat. On your inhale, lift the hips, sweep the right arm up overhead. About 3 or 4 more breaths here, your own pace. And take your time. Eventually, we'll meet in a lizard lunge if you're not already there. Point the toes towards the front edge of the mat. This time, we'll meet in half pigeon. So we'll heel toe the right foot across the mat, bringing the right shin down, working it parallel towards the front edge of the mat. We'll stay lifted for a few breaths. So making sure hips are squared and grounded, you can plant the fingertips down onto the mat, maybe bring them out a little bit wider as you begin to engage with legs, engage with core, and then lift your gaze, 2, 3 breaths here at the top. You can choose to stay here, or we'll take a little rolling breath here from our half pigeon. So on your inhale, press into the fingertips, lift your chest, maybe lift your gaze. On your exhale, bend your elbows, begin to allow the chest to melt down, creating a little rolling movement here through the spine. As you inhale, lift the chest, straighten the arms, maybe lift your gaze. As you exhale, begin to roll that breath down. A few more breaths here in that movement if you'd like. You can choose to stay, or on your next exhale, begin to fold all the way down, finding your sleeping pigeon. Forearms to mat, or maybe lower all the way down to the chest. About 7 or 8 breaths on this side. You have the option to add a twist if you'd like. So think about threading the needle. We'll thread the left arm underneath the right shoulder. Right arm can stay in front. Option to take a half bind, wrapping that right arm around the low back. And then maybe the peace fingers bind the right big toe. A few more breaths here. And take your time. When you feel ready, you can slowly begin to unwind. Make your way back to downward facing dog. Any movements along the way or other poses that you'd like. No rush to get there. On your next inhale, left leg will lift. You can bend your knee, stack your hips, finding that scorpion tail. An option to flip your dog. And as you feel ready, we'll meet in a lizard lunge. And step the left foot forward, this time left knee stacked up over ankle. Take your time to land. Any movements, point and flex the right toes this time, creating a little more movement to the hips. About 5 or 6 breaths to find your lizard. You can choose to stay here. You have the option to add the lounging lizard and horizon lunge. If you're not already there, we'll lift up onto the hands, tuck the right toes, lift your knee. Right hand to mat, left fingers up towards the sky, and then begin to sweep it towards the back edge of the mat as you pivot the toes over towards the left side. Hips to a hover. On your inhale, press into the feet, lift the hips, sweep the left arm up overhead. A few breaths here in the movement at your own pace. No rush to get there. Whenever you feel complete, we'll meet in a lizard lunge. Eventually, we'll make our way to half pigeon on the other side. As you're ready, we'll heel toe the left foot across the top edge of the mat. And bringing the left shin knee down towards the mat, working the shin parallel towards the front edge. Any adjustments you need, making sure hips are squared and grounded. We'll take a few breaths here at the top in a more active pigeon. You can bring the fingertips down, maybe bring the arms out a little bit wider as you inhale, so you can begin to engage the legs, the core. An option to stay or add those rolling breaths. So one more inhale, see if you can open up through the chest. On your exhale, begin to allow the chest to roll down as you bend the elbows, melt your chest down towards the mat. Inhale slowly rolls you back up. A few more breaths here at your own pace. And take your time, no rush. On your next exhale, you can begin to allow the chest to melt down for that sleeping pigeon, lowering forearms or maybe chest all the way down towards the mat. And take your time to settle. We'll take a few breaths here before we add the twist. If you'd like to add the twist, you can thread the right arm underneath the left shoulder this time, maybe bring the right ear to mat. Option to keep the left hand in front or maybe wrap it around the low back for a half bind. Then maybe the peace fingers reach for the left big toe. About 5 or 6 more breaths. And stay here longer if you'd like, or begin to unravel. We'll meet in our downward facing dog. Once you found your down dog, you can pedal up through the legs, any little movements that you need to even out. No rush to get there. We'll make our way to a seated forward fold. So taking your time, you can bring the gaze forward, then maybe slowly tiptoe the feet forward, beginning to wake up a little more through the hamstrings. Eventually, we'll bend the knees, lower the hips down. Extend the feet out in front. Option here to plant the hands on either sides of the thighs, press into the mat, lift your hips, you can scoot them up and back. And when you're ready, on your next inhale, reach the arms up overhead, see if you can find length through the spine. On your exhale, begin to lengthen the chest forward, nose to toes, chin to shin, seated forward fold. About 7 to 8 breaths here. We are over halfway. And take a moment to notice if your mind began to wander. Notice if you hold any tension anywhere through the shoulders, the jaw, the hips. Maybe let go of any tension you may hold through the toes. About 3 or 4 more breaths. And stay here longer if you'd like. Or if you feel ready, we'll slowly begin to lift up. You can bend your knees, plant your feet, maybe windshield wiper the legs side to side, any movement you need to release through the hips, the hamstrings. Eventually, we'll extend all the way onto our backs. We'll meet in a shoulder stand. You can begin to lift the legs, lift the hips, hands supporting the low back. And then maybe walking the elbows in a little bit closer, keeping the gaze forward at the toes the whole time. A few breaths here in the shoulder stand. You also have the option for legs up the wall if you prefer. If plow is in your practice, you can begin to make your way there. Begin to extend the feet up overhead. Keep hands supporting the low back unless the toes touch the floor above the head. If toes are grounded, you can straighten the arms, interlace the fingers behind the back. Again, keeping the gaze forward. And stay here longer if you'd like. Or whenever you feel ready, you can bend your knees, pass through Deaf Man's Pose, then slowly unravel all the way onto your back. Fish pose. Palms facing down, hands underneath the hips. You can hug the elbows in towards the torso. When you're ready, bend your elbows, lift your chest little to no weight in the head. About 3 or 4 breaths here. And one more breath, option here for a lion's breath. Take a big inhale. Open mouth, stick the tongue out. And slowly begin to draw the chin in towards the chest. We'll lower all the way down. You can plant the feet, windshield wiper the legs, maybe hug the legs in towards the chest. Any movement you need to release through the spine. And we'll find a twist. So legs can lower over towards the left, gaze can stay lifted, or maybe let it fall over towards the right. Any favorite twists, you can keep the legs together, eagle legs, any variation that feels good in the body. About 5 or 6 more breaths here. And as you feel ready, you can come back through center, legs in towards the chest, maybe happy baby. And taking your time, when you feel ready for the twist, we'll lower the legs over towards the right. Option to let the gaze fall over towards the left. About 5 or 6 more breaths. When you feel about even, you can slowly begin to unwind. And any last poses or movements that you need to finish out your practice. If you feel ready for Shavasana, you have the option to hug the legs in towards the chest, reach over the shins, maybe for opposite elbows, see if you can squeeze into a tiny little ball. Take another full breath in, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. And on your exhale, arms and legs out long, Shavasana. We'll be here for about a minute. If you would like additional time, feel free to pause the audio. Otherwise, I will be here to bring you back into the space. You may choose to stay here longer if you'd like. If you feel ready to come back to the surface, you can take a full breath in and empty the breath out. Option to make your way into a seat, choosing the path of least resistance. You can bring hands to heart center, maybe keep the eyes closed. We'll take 3 breaths. All together, take a full breath in. Exhale, let it go. Again, inhale and exhale. Last breath, filling up. Open mouth, let something go. Thank you so much for allowing me to share my practice with you today, and I hope to be with you next time you're on your mat.